Okay, welcome to the video. Today I will be discussing Guess I'll have to figure out what I'm discussing. I haven't worked out a topic. Oh, my new podcast. So the podcast is a collaboration between me and Ed. I interviewed Ed on my channel, and Ed and I have decided to make a podcast. And so we're calling the podcast Ignored Millennial. Ignored Millennial is going to be a conversation podcast. We're going to have conversations probably right here in my living room or at his house. We're hopefully going to have guests. So if you would like to be on a podcast, reach out to me, because I really want to have guests, and I think Ed does too. We're calling it Ignored Millennial because we're both millennials, or the oldest millennials. So we would be the millennials that lived the longest without the internet age. So we both remember when the internet came around. We remember our first emails. We remember the first audio clips that circulated. We remember chat rooms, the early chat rooms and forums. We remember the sound of the dial-up. It was so slow. It was like painfully slow to connect to the internet. Photos would load from top down very slowly through the page like that. And we're gonna be discussing a lot of different topics. It sounds like we're gonna start with mental health, and specifically we're gonna talk about autism. And it's gonna be a very interesting discussion about what autism is and what it's like to get diagnosed. Ed is diagnosed, and so we're going to talk about that process that he went through. And I'm not diagnosed autistic, but I guess I could be autistic. I don't know enough about it, to be honest. Yeah. I've never been diagnosed. So that's part of, I'm curious to talk to Ed about that process. I've always worked. I graduated from university with good grades. So if I'm autistic, I definitely am probably high functioning, where I can work, keep a job, make money, earn a living, and I don't have much trouble at work, working for companies. I had my own company for a while. I've been a contractor, so an entrepreneur. So it's interesting, this idea of being autistic, but being high functioning enough to have a career or make a living. And there's a spectrum for autism. And so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about mental health in general. We're going to talk about depression. We're going to talk about being happy and the difference between being happy and being depressed. We're both comedians, and so which means we've done stand-up comedy quite a bit. We're not going to necessarily talk about that all the time, but I think our show will be funny just because we naturally, both of us, gravitate towards discussing comedy like premises. And so I don't know if we'll be doing bits. I guess it'll be interesting to see as the episodes go on, one after the other, whether we gravitate towards doing more or less bits, and whether one of us is inserting like jokes into the shows. I mean, I think I naturally do that. I just don't know. I don't know Ed that well, so I don't know if I'll naturally do that, but my guess is that we'll both probably do that to some extent. I think of podcasting and vlogging as an art. The vloggers and podcasters that I really like and that I admire are constantly coming up with new and unique content, which means they bring on new guests that are interesting to talk to, and they explore the city where they live. They go places. They bring their camera and they're willing to film in public. They're willing to conduct interviews in studios or homes. And so whether the guest comes into their home or whether they go to a studio and bring the guest to the studio, the really good artists are getting good interviews with unique people, and they're also good at the interview, and they engage with the people well. They're authentic. And so my goal for our show is to create good content, which means coming up with good topics that we can explore together, me and Ed, and see where it takes us. Obviously, we're going to evolve as we create more and more episodes, and I think after a while we'll want to have more and more guests. Like, we'll want to find people that are willing to come on and have conversations with us to learn about new topics, like things that other people are experts in. So whether that's other comedians that are more successful than us, like that have played and performed on bigger stages and things, that's an angle that I think would be great for Ed and I to have someone like that on our show and talk to them. But also people that are, just entertainers or even like intellectuals, scientists of sorts and things like that that have researched different topics and can give us insight into what they've studied and their life experience so that we can learn from them, and those conversations will create good content for our show. The other thing is, I work in healthcare or the senior citizens industry, and I haven't really talked about it publicly just because I don't really know exactly where the privacy aspect of it is. For example, I don't know what things I should or shouldn't be discussing in terms of my clients, the senior citizens, in terms of their personal information, like what I should and shouldn't be discussing about where I work. But I know that I'm allowed to discuss my career and my job. And I know that I got into the job because I wanted to do something that was community based and feel a sense of contribution to the community, where I was working with people that are needing help, like whether it's dementia or something like that. And so I want to be able to talk about what I do in some respect. So I think with this show with Ed, I'm going to insert little things here and there about the clients and the company that I work for and my experience there and how it's changed. One of the things I will say, and I'm sure I'm allowed to talk about, is that senior citizens are at the end of their life, nearing the end of their life. It's no secret that when you're a senior, you only have 20, 10, 5 years left. So you're for sure going to pass away. And so that reality can be what I've noticed. Different people handle it differently. And, when you're younger, you're not faced with it. And you can sort of live in a way where it's not in your face and you don't have to deal with it. It's not happening soon. You don't have the health issues that come with aging yet. And so you can kind of pretend like you're never going to die or it's going to be a long time. But when you're a senior citizen, it's obvious. You're surrounded by people that are aging, and so they're facing challenges with their bodies. And so whether that's arthritis or movement issues or dementia, you have to adapt. And a lot of times adapting means you're forced to take care from other people, whether those are nurses or doctors or just the staff at the home where you live, or even your family having to help you more where you're living. If you're still living in place at your residence, it's usually the family that is doing more to help you, and you have to accept that. And it's not always easy to accept that you need help. People really like their independence. They get used to being independent. And so when you're forced because of a health situation to deal with accepting help, it can be hard. And you become more humble, and you have to become grateful for the help and service of other people. And you might not want it, but it might be a necessity just for you to survive. That might be the reality. And the other reality, like I was alluding to, is that you're going to die fairly soon. And it can be scary and it can be sad. The fact that your life is going to end, and maybe you haven't done all the things you want to do yet. Maybe you haven't traveled everywhere you want to travel. Maybe you haven't started the business you wanted to start, or have the relationship that you expected that you were going to have. And so when you are nearing death and you have some of those regrets or those feelings, it can be sad to think that you're not going to achieve those things. And I think a lot about reincarnation working where I work, because I'm kind of noticing that some of the people seem to be more comfortable with it, as if they might have done this before. Like they don't seem as frightened by the prospect of dying, almost like they're an old soul and they've had many lifetimes, and dying is just part of it that they've done over and over again. And then some people feel to me like young souls, where they might be in a 90-year-old body, and that's the first time they've ever experienced being in a 90-year-old body. And they're really uncomfortable with what's happening to them, and they might push back against it and resist this concept of dying. So I think about this idea of reincarnation, and I don't have evidence that we reincarnate after we die, but I don't have evidence that we don't reincarnate after we die. So I like the idea that we've been in other bodies before, and that every time we incarnate on Earth or another planet, we learn a little bit more about what it's like to be conscious and what it's like to wake up every day and go to sleep every night and have to survive and make a living and be surrounded by people that we love and be in relationships. And so I'm kind of getting used to watching as my clients at work inevitably pass on. Even since I've worked at this company, a lot of my clients have died. And at first it was a little bit shocking. I've never worked anywhere where the clients died regularly, but I got used to it in the sense that it comes with the territory. It's like when you work in this industry, that's what happens. And so you either get used to it or you change jobs, basically. There's no way to get around what's happening. And so I kind of look forward to discussing this stuff with Ed on our weekly or bi-weekly show, where we discuss anything that's going on, everything that's happening to us, all the things that Ed is thinking about on a day-to-day, all the things that I'm thinking about day-to-day, and then we come together and we try to pick a topic and stay on that topic and relate our experiences in the past to that topic and have an interesting conversation that will make for good art, and be consistent about making our art. And like I said, bring on guests. I just love the idea of inviting someone I don't know. Maybe I've never even talked to them before. Maybe they're a friend or family that I've just always wanted to record with, like capture their essence or their thoughts on camera and get it into a form where it's a creative art form, and put it out to the world, to the planet, for everyone to get to know this person that I've always known. But I also like the idea of finding someone randomly that is passionate about something and just interviewing them and finding out, like, how did you even get into this niche topic, or how did you master this art form that you practice and study. And it sounds like Ed is into that too, and he wants to create good content. And because he's studied filmmaking, he has thought a lot about what making good films is all about, and how a good show stays on topic and explores one topic in depth for each episode, and then moves on to other topics, and choosing topics that are relevant to our generation and our demographic and other demographics. And it's interesting to listen to people from one generation when you're not in that generation, because you have no idea what it was like to grow up without the internet, or to grow up only with the internet. And so our perspective on Earth is completely different from someone that came along when it was impossible to buy a house, or immigration was different, where maybe you weren't used to being around people from other countries, or maybe you came from another country to this country or another country, and so your experience is, I don't know much about this place. I didn't grow up here. And so it's fascinating to learn what it's like to grow up in Alberta, or to be a white guy, or to be in our 40s. You know, stuff like that. A lot of people haven't tried stand-up comedy. So Ed and I know what it's like to be on stage, to have the goal of wanting to make an audience laugh, being selfless about writing jokes for the purpose